Hi, Jacqui. So excited to have you on the show. We've definitely had a few technical issues along the way, but finally excited to have you on the show. There for years now, and I've always been inspired by your passion for climate, sustainability, and the fact that you've been a kick-ass founder who's been out there taking names and making and crafting stories that inspire people out here in Southeast Asia. And I am excited to share your story out here.
I know, it's so great to catch up with you again. It's been so long.
Yeah, so Jacqui, I'm excited to, I guess, turn the camera around and put the lens on you a little bit here. So Jacqui, could you share a little bit more about who you are professionally?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on board. My name's Jackie. So, for my day job, I'm the founder of a communications company here. So, I work to try and help really visionary startups or entrepreneurs, social multinational businesses get more visibility for their social and environmental impact stories. So, I've been doing that for about the last 5 years, but on the side, I'm involved in anything to do with sustainability and social impact. So, a huge believer in the startup ecosystem here. I help support Impact Collective, which is a movement here. I help co found the Singapore Environmental Film Festival here. So, very involved in the social entrepreneur ecosystem.
Amazing. And Jacqui, I gotta first ask that question, right? So how did that first passion for climate and sustainability first start for you?
Um, when I was young, I grew up in a national park in Australia. So, I think I've always been very connected to nature. And I was about 18 years old when I started making documentaries and documentaries around social issues, environmental issues. And I was really, really lucky to work on a UN environmental project around the world. And at the beginning of the project, we were trying to raise awareness around climate change. But by the end of the project, after working with these guys for about 4 or 5 years, sailing all over the world, visiting all of these incredible solutions, I was like, wow, the solutions exist already. Like we have solutions for every single social and environmental problem. Um, so then the issue is just like scale. So I think like wanting to make an impact and wanting to work on environmental issues has been with me since I was born, or for as long as I can remember. Storytelling, the passion for picking up a camera and finding amazing human stories as long as I can remember. But it's only been recently in the last, like, I guess, last decade that I've really seen business as a way to bring it all together and actually leverage business as a tool to create meaningful impact.
Amazing. And what's interesting is that you've also combined this with a very entrepreneurial flair, right? That's how I would say it, right? Which is that you've always done this, in some ways you could say freelance initially, but also you've done this from an agency, but also a very entrepreneurial dynamic. So could you share how did that angle come out instead of, for example, like, doing it from a governmental or foundation or nonprofit angle?
Yeah. Well, actually, I've never really freelanced, which would have probably made more sense financially. But I love people too much to work by myself. So I've always been kind of building teams. So my first company, was in Australia doing film production. And then my second company was with building a team here. So I've always tried to grow and build businesses because I believe that business and entrepreneurship in general is a very efficient way to scale anything, right? Um, I do think that we need all stakeholders. You need to work with the government. NGOs play a really important role as well. There's lots of different stakeholders involved. But if you really want to do things fast, working in business, I think, is an incredible, like, there's just so much opportunity, right? There's so much opportunity. There's so many problems out there. We need tools that can come up with solutions and scale them quickly. So I see business as like the fastest tool we have to solve problems like climate change. So that's where my passion for entrepreneurship really came out. It wasn't like I was chasing to be an entrepreneur. It was very much accidental. What I was chasing was, how do we solve these massive global challenges that are impacting every corner of the globe? What else impacts every corner of the globe? I know, Coca-Cola, or like a massive multinational company. Like, business is incredible how quickly and how huge they are as a system. So that's where I got really passionate about like systems change and trying to work across a full, system to be able to make an impact. So yeah, that's where my entrepreneurial flair comes from, as you put it.
And what's interesting is that I've also kind of like gotten a chance to see you slowly kind of like iterate on those different dimensions, right? Starting with that, initial like small approach, small team, social enterprise, B Corp, and I see you kind of like try on different, outfits, right? I would say, in terms of language and approach. Can you tell us a little bit more about that evolution from your perspective?
Oh my gosh, yes, it's so funny. I've literally gone full circle, right? Most people have a corporate job and they quit their job to go and save the world. I did the complete wrong way around. I had this like amazing job, sailing around the world, and so I started working with a lot of nonprofit organizations, a lot of foundations, using my skill in storytelling, filming, photography, writing, and I kind of went the complete opposite way around. I went from NGO and I was like, wait, well, these guys lack resources. So we need to be more strategic. So then I started thinking about larger, multilateral organizations, maybe the UN, maybe with government. And ultimately, I kind of followed the full circle all the way around. If I really wanted to make a difference, I thought of media at one point. Maybe I should be in the press and media because, obviously storytelling and media. I do think that media is one of the most powerful tools to change the world. But there was no media company I wanted to work for. I think ultimately, every entrepreneur is an entrepreneur because they can't find the business that they want to work for. I would love to work for a company doing what we're doing. It just doesn't exist. So I didn't really have a choice, or I didn't feel like I had a choice but to kind of build our own industry, right? For those of you that don't know B Corp, that was such an enlightening moment for me because I think when we first met at Impact Hub, if I'm not wrong, which was the first kind of impact space in Singapore about a decade ago, right? Impact Hub was very much about the social entrepreneur, right? People doing good, but it still had a bit of a stigma around people that didn't really make money, right? They don't make money, they just do good things. And for me, I was always very challenged because I didn't agree with that. Wanted to bring this social and environmental impact into like multi-billion-dollar businesses and actually use it as a strategy to increase their business, right? Like I really believed in that. And so when I first heard about B Corp, which is a certification to help companies really verify their social and environmental impact, but they're still profit-making businesses, I got really excited. And I remember they had one of their big forums because they're very big in Europe and the US, very nascent in Asia at the time. And they had a forum in Europe. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going. And I went to Rome. I didn't know anyone. I just needed to be around these leaders that believed in using business as a force for good. And that's where I met, to this day, some of my best friends, like business leaders, CEOs that are trying to find new solutions using business as a tool. So yeah, I think it's been a really, really interesting journey, especially in the last 12 months. I think it's starting to click. You see huge organizations using sustainability strategy as a way to grow their business. So it's starting to catch on more and more. So we've been kind of riding the wave as any entrepreneur, when you come in a bit too early and then you take a step back and then you come in again, but then again, you're too early. So, the concept of systems change, it's still relatively new. Being a systems entrepreneur, it's still relatively new, but really excited to be here. And I'm sure there's plenty more iterations to go.
Yeah, that's a big tussle for a lot of folks, right? I remember all of us hanging out at Impact Hub Singapore, at Somerset in Singapore, and that was very much like the first cluster of folks there, and there was a lot of struggle, right? Because there were a lot of founders who were all very mission driven and very much confused about what the best way to get there was, right? Because at that point of time, I think startup funding wasn't around. So everybody's trying to access all kinds of different pockets of money, right? Friends and family, grant funding from the tech side, the media side, as well as from the social sector side. And then obviously there was this arguments about, if you're really passionate about something, did you want to build as a did you want to build as a social enterprise, which is a nonprofit plus? Or would you look at it as building as a social enterprise, which is a corporate minus? Would you build as a startup, which was question mark, or would you just build it as an agency / normal company, right? It feels like things obviously have changed quite a lot since then. But how do you think, for someone who wants to, obviously make a difference, and obviously, people still have that debate now today, right? Which is like, is profit good? Is profit bad? And there still feels like it's still a perennial like debate that happens. back then, and I think it still happens today as well. How has your personal thinking about that dynamic matured and changed over time?
I don't think it's actually changed that much, to be honest. I don't come from a very privileged background. So money for me was something that was always necessary. Like it wasn't an option. Like I never went to university, I didn't go to any fancy school. Like earning money has always been important. You need to earn money. So growing up with that lens has been really great because no matter what business I run or build, number one is it needs to be sustainable. And the joke is like, there's nothing more unsustainable than bankruptcy, right? So, all the companies we've
Truth.
run, even the side projects, like the non-profit projects that I've run, we still make sure that it's sustainable first and foremost, because that's how you can make the biggest impact. So I think my perspective on that hasn't changed. Maybe the only thing that's evolved is that the opportunity is perhaps much bigger than estimated. I used to talk about the $1 billion opportunity, and now I see, the top 4 consulting firms talk about the $1 trillion opportunity, in sustainability and social impact. So when we look at industries like energy, food, agri, like there's actually trillions of dollars of opportunity. So I believe we're going to start to see some real unicorns that are coming out of this space from an environmental lens that are actually doing incredible impact, right? And changing lives and everything else. So if anything, my perspective has evolved to see an even bigger opportunity than I did before. I don't think I've ever felt like, profit is a bad thing. Profit is a really important thing because being a profitable business means grow, because that's how I use profit. Like if we have any extra money in the company, it goes into the growth of the business. I'm a huge fan of revenue-based businesses. So, which I'm sure we could talk all night investor and being the other side and what that's like. But from my side, I really believe if, as a founder, you have a responsibility to build up a stable business, pay your people well, invest in your impact reporting. Like you've got to walk the talk before you can go and promote other people to make an impact, right? We have to be BCorp certified before we go and tell everyone else to become BCorp certified, right? It's really important. And it's actually hard, right, for us because we don't have the resources of a massive multinational. So investing the time to do impact measurement as a small company is not easy. Like it's, and our score is not great. Like we need to improve. So I think I would say evolved, not really changed as a mindset.
Yeah. And how do you advise people? Because now we see this new generation of folks who want to be social entrepreneurs or want to be B Corp certified. And of course, you are now an ambassador for the B Corp movement in Southeast Asia. So, what advice do you have for folks who are thinking to themselves how to get started? Do you tell them not to rush? Do you tell them to think about what advice do you give them?
Okay, I will answer this with 2 lenses, okay? Because the first one for the founders that are listening, if you're a tech founder, you're a startup founder, get really clear on the purpose of why you're building the company, right? And find a way to start measuring that and tracking that. If you started a company because you want to bring access to water, or if you want to, I don't know, save the livelihoods of women, start tracking and measuring your impact. The B Corp tool is free. So as a founder, you really don't have an excuse not to use it. It's a free tool that anyone can go and use. And so start thinking early about how you can leverage all of the tools that are available to help you, create an impact. You don't need to have everything figured out just yet. The sustainable development goals, the global goals, the SDGs, that's another really easy framework. Just pick one. Which one are you most passionate about? Now embed that into the company. See what you can do every day to really make a difference. So that's for the founder. I'm going to switch gears and say that there's probably a lot of people that are listening that are in a day job, right, in a big company, and maybe they want to quit and become a founder, which is why they're listening to you and stalking you, right? I think for these guys, don't quit your job. Like try to find a way to become an entrepreneur and change your business. I gave a talk years ago saying that, we need more change makers in companies, right, if we want the companies to change. So I think there's a lot of perspective that needs to happen around the power of these huge companies and working within them. It's an amazing opportunity if you can change inside your business. And I'm seeing that now more and more. People that used to be in an IT role, they're now becoming sustainability, and those salaries are going up and they're becoming more respected. And now we're seeing chief sustainability officers becoming CEOs because that's what shareholders actually demand. So if you want to build your career, looking into this space as an opportunity is also good advice.
Why care? I mean, why do corporates care now, right? Because 10 years ago, everybody was saying like, oh, corporates would never care. I'm talking about,
I
right?
wasn't. I believe in you. I
I
remember.
mean, it was only Ben and Jerry's, right? 10 years ago, right? You know what I'm saying? And now it feels like, okay, corporates are caring more, right? It feels like, okay, so at least now there's a trend towards, I think everybody's at least, I think, more positive now. It feels like corporates are caring more on average. And the trend is towards more. So why do you think that's happening from your perspective, from your vantage point?
Basic economics, right? It's starting to hit the bottom line. And this is what I've been preaching for years, as you know. Like, if you look at every pillar of your business, starting at your team, recruitment, talent, young people are going to be impacted by climate change much more than older generations. They care about climate change, right? And if they're looking for a job, they're going to work in a company that it doesn't conflict with their personal values. So recruitment, you're going to save, again, millions, if not billions of dollars in recruitment fees. Attracting talent, like, we get applications from super senior leaders at big companies we could never compare with their salaries, but they want to work with us because they care about the vision and the excitement and the passion, right? So I think recruitment is just a huge cost saver. That's like one reason. Investments, banks, shareholders, like, everyone is seeing the risks involved in sustainability and social impact. Imagine being a property developer and you've got this entire property along the coastline, and then you haven't done the environmental assessment to see that actually it's all going to be underwater, and like, you're going to be, or you're investing in Bali, all of these amazing places where, the water is actually running out. So I think people are starting to see that the environment impacts financials just as much as anything else. I mean, I could go on. Even the way that you market the product, right? The rise in consumer trends for people caring more about sustainability. I think there was a report this year, I think it came out, the consumer trends report, saying that people are actually looking at the sustainability like label on packaging, which even I was surprised that really makes a difference. And it was like more than half. It was like 60% or something. It's crazy. So I feel like the consumer demand is there. It's a great way to position your brand like as a unique competitive edge compared to all of the others, which are just like out there to make money, right? So yeah, recruitment, consumer, like, there's no downside at this point. Even the cost, like, sometimes people say, oh, but it's expensive to do sustainability. And I just said, the tool for B Corp is free. Like, you have so much wealth in that tool. And then once you join the community, you now have access to hundreds of CEOs all over the world who are equally passionate about this. So you're like tapping into this huge network of business leaders that want to support you to scale and grow your business. So like, it just makes sense from every single level. I don't think there's pullback, except for, if you start to talk about like massive transformations. I remember working with one company, the entire industry really, really needs to change, looking at, in food and, but then the opportunity for the companies that are smart and they started investing in plant-based meats, and they're ahead of the trend. And now look how much money is being poured into that industry, right? So I just think it's a smart business decision. And people can think I'm crazy, but I mean, that's how the trend is going.
And when you see that the trend is going that way, how do you feel about your role as part of that trend, especially at VS Story? How do you see that developing over time? I mean, you see that from a storytelling perspective for sure, but how do you see your role, especially in Southeast Asia?
I'm so proud of the work we do. So I think for me, like, the biggest thing just from a personal standpoint is being able to wake up and work with people that I love. Like, I love, like, hand on my heart, love every single client that I have right now. Like, and we're lucky because we're small enough, we can kind of be selective about who we want to work with and pick the brands that we feel are really changing the world, or investors that are really investing in incredible solutions that are scaling and saving lives. And we see that, right? Because as storytellers, you're actually witnessing it. Sometimes we're actually filming it. So we're actually physically meeting these stories, So I think that from just a personal perspective, I think it's really interesting. I don't know. Wait, what was the question in the beginning? I think I went off trail and reminiscing about all of our adventures with all of our clients.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I guess riffing off on that, why is storytelling important in the context of sustainability and all of this, right? I mean, um, because it feels like you can always make the argument that science is more important or economics is more important in the context of sustainability. But what is the role of storytelling and audiovisuals and all these
Yeah.
film and creative? What's the role of that from your perspective in the sustainability movement from your perspective? Yeah.
So I guess we do communications very differently. Like you mentioned agency or advertising agency, but very different from that world because that world is very much in different silos, right? Maybe you have your marketing or your growth or your internal comms or your HR or your policy or whatever. As a communications company, what we do is we really look at the vision of the company, the purpose of why they exist, and we align that across all of their comms, from how they speak internally, how they build the culture, how they then speak to investors, engage their shareholders, how they then reach out to their clients and customers, and how they can ultimately turn their community around them into their brand ambassadors. So they're building a full communication strategy around it, right? So that's kind of what we do as a day job. And I think it's important because again, two lenses. For the smaller companies, we're helping them reach the economy of scale, right? Because if you're a small startup, let's say you want to replace plastic and you have this really visionary technology, visionary idea, and it works, it makes business sense. Perhaps they're just not able to communicate to the right people, right? They don't know how to speak to an investor. Or like you said, maybe they've come from a nonprofit background and they need to learn how to speak in the business world. They need to learn B2B sales, right? Or maybe it's the other side. Maybe they're B2B their whole life and now they're trying to do a consumer product, right? I know a few people that have quit their jobs to do like sustainable brands, like sustainable toothpaste or whatever. I think from a startup company, communications is critical to learn how to scale your company and reach the right people and build that network and build that ecosystem. For the larger companies, it's on the same page. And so that's what I really love is like, how do you take the vision of a regional CEO and actually get everyone on their team to really believe what they're doing and work together to find, like, to innovate, right? To come up with new ideas, because maybe they don't have the solutions. The big company doesn't have it, but the smaller ones do. So I see storytelling as a tool to like enable connection, collaboration, partnerships, ecosystem building. I mean, you know the drill, you're the same, right? It's about doing podcasts, sharing with one another, leveraging off each other to build a stronger ecosystem and really prove the case that together as a system, we're actually going to become super successful, right? And we're growing along with all of our clients for the past 10 years, which is amazing. So
Yeah, I love that. And I think, the riff off that, I think that what you made me think about is that from a consumption perspective, it's hope, right? you know, I think it's a little bit of a hope that, you get to consume because, if I get that story about, there's actually a path to getting to a better world and that better world can be better through this route, through consuming this rather than that by going this company versus that. You
yeah,
know, that's worth
totally.
something, right?
Every product you buy has an impact, and it's going to either be negative or it's going to be positive. So you can buy like ice cream, right? The other day I was buying ice cream because I was feeling cheeky, and looking at the different tubs in the supermarket, and I actually wasn't aware that there was B Corp ice cream apart from Ben and Jerry's, as you mentioned. But I've been trying to be more vegan and vegetarian recently, and I was like trying to find like a vegetarian ice cream, and there was one with a B Corp label, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. Now I've learned about this new B Corp brand, and that was a nice vegan ice cream, delicious by the way. And I was like, purchase of this is supporting their employees, the governance of the company is legitimate, their legal accountability, their workers, their supply chain. Like, that's a huge weight off my shoulders. And every time you buy a product, you're making a decision to make an impact either way. So why not make it a positive one?
Interesting. So it's a vote for the future that you want to
Yes,
have.
exactly. B Corp is making a vote every time you buy.
Awesome. I love that. And with that in mind, obviously, how do you personally think that when we think about that vote for the future, right? You know, there's a lot of people pulling in different directions, right? I mean, using ice cream, right? You know, there's the yummiest ice cream, which is like you know, yeah, with terrible practices, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, the vegan ice cream, which is maybe 5 to 10% potentially. I mean, you don't know, right? But maybe it's potentially not as yummy. But like you said, has that governance, etc. You obviously vote with that dollar. Um, how do you think about that tussle? Do you think B Corp is going to be one of many of things in the future? Do you think it's going to be like the dominant thing? I mean,
Yeah.
well, how do you really think about it? Yeah.
Well, two things first. I think that you're right. There is sometimes a challenge, let's call it product, right? That maybe people that start, like founders that start purely purpose-driven founders, maybe are less inclined to be really focusing on the profit and on the product and on the customer service and all of these things that tech companies are brilliant at, right? So I would prefer to help the founders see the importance of having excellent customer serving, having a better product, better flavor. Like I want B Corp companies to outperform on all levels, not just because they're nice and social impact or because they have a good story. Like I believe that the products can be better quality, and the B Corp label actually becomes representative of you're getting like the best for the world, not just best in the world, right? Across all levels. So I'll quickly correct that. And then the second part of that is where I think it's going. I think, yeah, absolutely. People are really familiar with fair trade. Fair trade is pretty common. I think it's one of the world's largest verifications. That's a product certification. And so that's really important for the product to be certified. B Corp certifies the entire company, right up to even the constitution of the company. B Corp will eventually become just common practice, that there will be certified companies everywhere and you can just make that choice. The ultimate vision of B Lab, which is the nonprofit which verifies the certification process, they actually want to change the law, like change the legal structure of business. And they've done that in many countries around the world, where when you register your business, you can choose to register as a nonprofit, as a for-profit, or as a benefit corporation that will benefit everybody, right? Which means that you're legally liable to protect all of your stakeholders, not just your shareholders. Because right now, most constitutions, or the purpose of business is really to give returns to shareholders. So that's ultimately what B Lab is trying to do. I think that one is maybe a bit further away, but definitely I hope to be one of the first legal B corporation entities in Singapore. If we can pass that law here, that would be amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. On that note, could you share about time that you have been brave?
You know what? Being someone that has been building companies and just, foot on the pedal for so long, for so many years, and to start to finally see the trend, tipping towards, like, everyone kind of is waiting for that moment where their category is going to become mainstream, right? And so we've been kind of trying to build this category for a really long time. And to finally feel that momentum and to feel it happening, and then for COVID to hit, and to cut your business by like 80% within 24 hours, it was like, if there was ever a time to quit, right? That was my time. Like, that was my moment. Just like, take a message from the universe, just take a break, do something more responsible, like get a more stable, like how on earth I'm going to have to fire everybody, I'm going to have to lose. Like, that was probably one of the worst moments of my life, to be honest. That first kind of month of COVID, I was in complete denial. I don't know about you when COVID first hit, but for me, I was still traveling like crazy right up until they literally canceled. I remember the last flight was out of Thailand, and and there was no one in the airport. And we got back to Singapore, and I think Singapore went to lockdown shortly afterwards. And that's when the reality started to hit. And I think that would have been an excellent time to kind of accept fate, that, okay, entrepreneurship is just not your thing. You've just had bad luck, pack up your bags and, go get a job for a while until the economy can recover. And so to decide not to do that, to make a decision not to fire anyone, not even to reduce anyone's salaries, to just try and find solutions. I think was pretty brave. I don't know if it was stupid or brave, but let's go with brave. That's a bit kinder. And you know what? Once that decision was made, and once you kind of look at the fear and you're like, okay, I'm terrified, but let's just see what we can do. As soon as that decision was made, clients, like, you call back your partners and then you try and find solutions together, or you adapt and you find other people, or you reach out to other BCorp CEOs and you say, what are you doing? There's another company we love in Canada, like, hey guys, you're similar industry. You've got all your filmmaking, we had flights booked every month for the rest of the year. We were going to go and meet with all of our partners, whatever. Everything was canceled. And just phone call after phone call or Zoom after Zoom of like, let's just treat this like any other problem we have as a founder and find a solution. And actually we ended up having our best year from having, like, thinking we had to close the company. We had our best year, and we've actually hired people in the process. So it's like, it's amazing what happens when you really are driven by a sense of what you're doing is important, and it's worth kind of overcoming the fear. But I'll be totally honest, I couldn't have done it unless I had the team that I have and the partner that I have. And like, he's also a tech startup founder. I think, like, having someone else that gets it and gets you're crazy and is okay to go on that ride with you. I remember that moment sitting down with your husband being like, okay, you in? You on the boat or off the boat? And it's like, okay, I'm on the boat. And then, like, making that decision. I mean, you need to have an army of people supporting you. But yeah, so I'd consider that pretty brave or crazy.
Awesome. I love that story. And let's talk about that pandemic, craziness, right? So the craziness of being on that flight and seeing no one around and not accepting it and all of that. What was that like? How were you feeling around that time period?
Well, it hadn't hit me, right? I was still in denial. So it wasn't in that moment. I think when I saw, seeing and Changi was pretty effing terrifying, like, it was like, okay, this is real now. Like, I'd probably been to Changi every, I don't know, not every week, but every fortnight for years, and to suddenly see it empty and to realize it might be a while till I'm back in Changi again. Like my second home. That was really weird. I think I was still in denial, a little bit of shock. But then when I started to really understand what was happening, like everybody around the world, I was gripped by fear, right? I did not want, my family, I don't have, none of my blood relatives are here in Singapore. I had no idea when I would be able to see them again. I still haven't seen them. My brothers, had little babies and I can't go visit. So I think I'm just so grateful to be in a country that I'm proud of, right? And how, here in Singapore, and how the government is taking these harsh stances to take care of the society and community. I mean, so yeah, I can't deny it was terrifying, but I'm just also like, so much gratitude. It's kind of this weird mix of being, oh wow, I'm so grateful, but I feel terrible. Like, I should feel this way, but this is how I feel. And I love how languishing became a really popular term, because that's, I think, what I went through, like everybody else. Like, I was probably, even now, I'm not at full capacity. I'm probably still, 60% productivity. I have a lot more that I could tap into, but I've just been so gentle this last year to just make sure that, we implemented so many mental health tools. We didn't have them before. So COVID, like, inspired our team to adopt Safe Space, which is a tech startup here that helps companies kind of onboard mental health access and things like that, which, we thought about before, but it wasn't really a priority. But during COVID, it suddenly became like, crap, we need to take, like, and it's no joke, right? I know a founder that committed suicide in the last 24 months. I've seen people really struggle with their mental health. So it's not easy. Like I said, I'm brave or crazy, and crazy it's a very, very difficult topic for founders to discuss openly. I'm an open book, as you can probably tell. So yeah, I would say I felt pretty freaking crazy the past 24 months and pretty unstable. But again, lucky I have such an amazing support group or army of supporters around me.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing that in all of the, like you said, the craziness of that pandemic over the past 2 years, that you've not only been able to take the moment to, I mean, like the rest of the world, just yeah, take a long moment, myself included, to take a while to process that, but also figure out not to adapt, but also evolve and actually overcome. And I'm glad to hear, like you said, with the help of your support system and your team and community, to be able to, not just overcome, but also thrive, right? So, what a story of this being able to not only preserve, but also to keep growing, right? And this have the best year ever.
Yeah, I
Um,
wish I wish more people would tell stories of them in the fetal position in the bathroom crying. Because I mean, that would have made a great podcast if you'd interviewed me 12 months ago, right? Like, so many people have had that moment and they think that they're not normal. And like, no, 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 sweetie, it's okay. Everyone's done that at least a few times this year.
I think mine was what was mine? I think what was mine? I think mine was probably just like, I don't know, eating way too much junk food.
Oh.
Eating way too much takeout at 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. Probably that'll be my equivalent, I think.
There's
Yeah.
worse things that can happen. That's a coping mechanism.
Uh, if that's your second or third takeout meal of the day, probably. Especially if you haven't moved for the day. Well,
Yeah.
that's why I'm on the health and fitness journey now.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So Jacqui, I think no, my last question here is, as if you could, really go back in time 10 years ago, right? What advice would you have given yourself back then, 10 years ago, back in 2011?
I definitely wish, I don't think I was bold enough. I think so many people thought that I was, or didn't take me. I was so underestimated back then, like so underestimated. No one took it seriously. No one took sustainability really that seriously. Like when I talk about all of these trends, like, no, one day it's going to be worth billions. Like no one really got it, or a few of our clients did, and some of, like, the retention. I'm still working with people from that era, right? So I've been working with people for a really long time. And I think what I would have told myself, or what I wish I could have been, is just to be a bit more bold and a bit more like, believing in myself more, because I knew it. Like I knew it at my core that this was the future and this is what was going to happen. And I happened exactly how I thought it was going to happen. It's just that I didn't have enough confidence to really step out there. And I wish I could go back and tell myself to like get more like coaching or whatever, do the work, right? Do the all of that insecurity. Like, for any advice for anyone out there, especially women in business, like try to tackle that as early as you can, because it saves you a decade of wasting time doubting yourself. I probably spent the first 6 years, 7 years doubting myself that this is legit, that I'm legit, right? The imposter syndrome thing. It's like, no, 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 I'm not legit. I'm not legit. Even now, it still like hits me every now and then. And it's like, God damn it, if I could go and start it then and say, no, 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 you're on the right track. Just keep going. That definitely would have been my advice, to just be louder. Don't be afraid of speaking out and believing what you believe in. And leading with love when everyone else is trying to be aggressive and talk about sales and marketing. And I can be out there and be just as aggressive and talk about how love is like the best leadership strategy. And people, one day people will actually listen, and that's what they're starting to do. And we have leaders like Jacinda Ardern, that are leading entire countries now. So yeah, I wish I could go back in time and do that.
Amazing, Jacqui. Thank you so much for sharing. Um, a small tidbit: my daughter's name is Arden as well, actually.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, after?
but I had no idea, to be honest. We picked
Okay.
the name, and then it turns out maybe subconsciously, who knew? But
Yeah,
turns out
maybe you knew
maybe.
something. Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome. What a great name.
yeah. So wrapping things up here, I'd love to kind of paraphrase the three big themes that I got from this discussion here. The first is, thank you so much for sharing. I think your passion for, B Corps, for sustainability, for changing the world for the better. And I think it's just awesome to hear that high energy just come true throughout the entire discussion. And just seeing that not just show up in terms of your experience, but also through, I think, your actions, and through, I think, the insights that you shared. The second is, of course, is thank you so much for, I think, sharing a lot of advice and how to think through about what sustainability and communication means. Because fundamentally, every consumer is making a dollar vote for the future based on their actions. And similarly, talent is also making a dollar vote for the future based on the companies they choose to join. Based on their sustainability practices, and so is the company executives, right, who are choosing to work with your company and not in terms of overhauling their sustainability as well. So I think it's just really interesting to hear that, which is something that we used to discuss, in harsh, weirdo tones 10 years ago to now, it's a trend that's going to keep on going because, like you said, it's becoming more and more a problem, and also because, like you said, it is becoming more and more of a business, and both things need to happen because, like you said, nothing is more unsustainable than a bankruptcy. And I love, I think, how actually you tied it up back to the roots, which is that that you had grown up, in the childhood where you had to make money to live, right? And that there's no shame in there, and there's no honor, in not having money, right? So
I think it's actually a blessing.
yeah, exactly, right.
You have nothing to lose.
Yeah, exactly. So you just gotta make sure that everything is there, right? Sustainable. And lastly, thank you so much for, I think, sharing some of that raw honesty around the pandemic about how crazy it was that you changed your lifestyle from a place where Changi was your second home, that you were there every fortnight, and that, the shock of that changing your routines, how that changed your client book and, shocked it by, like you said, an order of magnitude smaller than it was initially, but then you eventually building it up with the support of your community and friends and your team to be better than ever. It's such an incredible story, and thank you so much for sharing all of that, Jacqui, for all the folks out there.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. And it's so nice to see you again. And I look forward to seeing you again at the Impact Hub when it relaunches again in Singapore.
Looking forward to it as well. See you around, Jacqui.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.